And there are at least 3 ways that you can violate this command. And a couple of you have been out with me witnessing. And so if you've been with me or if you watch Ray Comfort or some other street evangelist, for the most part, when we're asking a person, okay, have you broke any of the laws? And then we'll go through like a few of the laws in the list. And we'll get to this one about, have you taken God's name in vain? And for the most part, we'll show them how, like, okay, if you're saying like OMG or using Jesus Christ's name in a flippant way, that you violated this command. And so if you're taking notes, these 3 are not going to be on the screen, but there are at least three ways that you can violate this command. And the first one is by profanity. The first way you can violate this command is by profanity. And this is using God's name in blasphemy or as a cuss word. The second way is frivolously. And this is when you're using God's name in a worthless, superficial way. You're just using his name. You're not being serious about it or adding any kind of value or purpose. You're just saying his name or the name of Jesus Christ, and there's no value or any kind of point to why you're using his name. In Matthew 12, verse 35 to 37, this is what Jesus says. He says, a good man out of the treasure of his heart brings forth good things. And an evil man out of the evil treasure brings forth evil things. But I say to you that for every idle word that men may speak, they will give an account of it in the day of judgment. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. So God is very serious about the words that we say, and even more so about how we use his name. So the first way we can violate this command is with profanity. The second way is frivolously. And the third way that you can violate this command is hypocritically. And this is where you're claiming the name of God, but you're acting in a way that disgraces him. In Romans 2, verse 21 to 24, and as I read this, I want you to examine yourself and ask yourself this question, whether you ask this of someone else or you thought it in your head when you're looking at somebody else. In Romans 2, verse 21, Paul says, you therefore who teach another, do you not teach yourself? You who preach that a man should not steal, do you steal? You who say, do not commit adultery, do you commit adultery? You who abhor idols, do you rob temples? You who make your boast in the law, do you dishonor God through breaking the law? For the name of God is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you. This is what he was saying to the Jews. And so our lip service and our lifestyle has to match. Our character and our conduct has to match. Otherwise, we're blaspheming the holy name of God. Now, the second part of this verse, in verse 33, where he says, but you shall perform your oaths to the Lord, it comes from these other 2 verses right here. So Numbers chapter 30, verse 2, it says, if a man makes a vow to the Lord, or swears an oath to bind himself by some agreement, he shall not break his word, but he shall do according to all that proceeds out of his mouth. And then Deuteronomy 23 is like it. It says in verse 21 that when you make a vow to the Lord your God, you shall not delay to pay it. For the Lord your God will surely require it of you. So if you make a vow or a promise or you swear that you're going to do something for God or do something in God's name, God's expecting you to do that right away. He's expecting you to pay it. Otherwise, it says it would be sin to you. But if you abstain from vowing, if you don't vow at all or swear at all, it shall not be sin to you. That which has gone from your lips you shall keep and perform, for you voluntarily vow to the Lord your God. So he's saying that no one forced you to do this. You voluntarily vow to the Lord your God what you have promised with your mouth. And that's pretty straightforward, right? Whatever you vow, you need to make sure you do it. So what is the problem over here in this section with verse 33 through 37? Well, in verse 34, Jesus says this. He said, I say to you, don't swear at all. So he tells us what they heard before in the Old Testament under the law of Moses, and Jesus is telling them, don't even swear at all. And so why is that? The issue that Jesus is addressing during this time, the Pharisees and the scribes would twist this law. And they would twist the law to the point where they would take any other name in a false oath. And so the whole mindset behind this was that they basically wanted to get out of a binding situation by appearing to be truthful while also not using God's name in vain. I ask yourself, if you ever done this in your life, if you ever, sworn or made an oath, and think about, why do we lie anyway? Because if they're trying to cover up their lie by making a false oath, well, what's the point of lying? And most of the time when we lie, if you lie in your life, it's either to cover up a sin that you've committed, or shame, or embarrassment, or, you're just too proud to just, show just how real or just to relate to somebody else. You're too proud to just humble yourself and admit when you're wrong. Or we lie to save the hurting of somebody else's feelings. And going through this, for whatever reason, this reminded me of many, many moons ago when I was a car salesman, and car salesmen already had the stigma of being a liar anyway. But I remember when I was working as a car salesman in North Carolina, and it was at a Chevrolet dealership, and there was this beautiful Stingray Corvette in the showroom, and I was like doing business with this lady across the table, and there's a bunch of old people kind of walking around. I wasn't paying too much attention to them, but she was, though. And she looked at me and she told me, she said, "I don't know how you can do this job with a clear conscience." And I'm like, "Well, what do you mean?" She said, "One of these old guys are going to buy this car and ask, how do they look in it? I'm thinking that they look like a dead bird in a new cage. But you're going to say that they look good." And the fact of the matter was that she wasn't lying. I mean, that was my thought, but of course I wasn't going to say that. But, we lie, and even though that's a liar type of lie, but it's still a lie. And we do that to save hurting somebody else's feelings. But what happens if you break your oath or break what you have sworn to do? What we learn in Scripture is that swearing an oath is wrong because it calls for the destruction of the object or the person if the oath is broken. So this is why Jesus is saying, swear not at all. And the reason why men swear, we see this in Hebrews chapter 6, verse 16. The writer says, "For men indeed swear by the greater, and an oath for confirmation is for them an end of all dispute." And so typically when people swear, they're trying to settle a debate. They're trying to prove their innocence. And it's like, as soon as you say, "Okay, look, I swear on this," then people leave you alone. They're like, "Okay, this guy must be serious. He must be telling the truth because he done swore. He must be honest." But in Romans 3:4, we read this, that let God be true and every man a liar. Just think for a second why we even have this system in place in the court system where a man or a woman has to come before the judge and put their hand on the Bible and swear. And the reason is because people can't be trusted. Like even on our best day, none of us are perfect. We either say the wrong thing, or in a situation we might remember something incorrectly, and both of these things can be taken as a lie or an untruth. Even King David said this in Psalm 116:11. He said, "I said in my haste that all men are liars." Now he admits that he said this hastily, but if you think about why he said this, whatever he was experiencing at this time, it led to this notion. Whatever he was going through with his enemies, with his friends, with his family. I mean, he said that all men are liars. He's calling his wife, kids, everybody's a liar. And you probably experienced this in your life too. You probably have gone, see some of the single ladies in here talking about all the guys are liars. You know what I'm saying? I understand that. I get that. I was one of those type of guys too. But we can definitely go through life and experience these different things where someone is either lying to us or trying to cheat us. Like we can definitely relate to what King David says over here. But furthermore, to appear more truthful, people will make an oath or swear an oath. And even for me, growing up, I'm originally from New Orleans, if you didn't know that already. And when I was growing up, even in middle school and elementary school, I would constantly hear these young people talk about, swearing to God, or I swear on my grandmother's grave, or on my mama, like whatever they want to say, they're trying to prove themselves and show themselves as truthful. Or sometimes if they're being serious and want to fight you, and they're like, I swear to this that I'll kill you, or whatever the case may be. And so they go this far in order to show themselves as truthful. But this is what David Gusick said. I'm going to read it to you. He says, "Having to swear or make oaths betrays the weakness of your word. It demonstrates that there is not enough weight in your own character to confirm your words." But yet we see the Pharisees and the scribes, they taught a way around breaking that law. And we see that in Matthew 23, verse 16. I forgot to tell y'all to mark that. If y'all will flip over with me to Matthew 23, verse 16, just a few pages over.